Hello, friends. Today we'll talk about how to hire freelance programmers. I was sitting with one of my friend in a bar this weekend, and this person is from my group. We have a big group of founders, and this person was asking me about, he has a brilliant idea. He wants to create a SaaS product, but he was not sure how he can recruit a freelance programmer. And then he had several questions around the similar topic. um, we were talking about it, and then I realized that because I've been involved in hiring a lot of people overseas, it would be a good idea for me to share this knowledge with everyone and then potentially help other people to do the same. So basically, the story behind this presentation is, if you have an idea, if you want to develop a software or a platform or a website or an app, you want to hire a freelance programmer, and you want to make sure that you don't burn your hands, you have questions related to how you can hire, what language of programmers you need to hire, things like that, then this is the video for you. Okay, so let's have a look what we can cover today. So potentially, um, the topics we will cover today in this deck is how you can decide which programmer you need. So basically, what kind of software you want to develop and what kind of language the programmer needs to program in, what kind of technological stack he or she needs to understand, how you could decide where to hire the programmer. So you could be based in UK, you could be based in USA, you could be based in any part of the world, but how you can decide based on your buying power or parity, uh, charge, parity equality, which place you can go to hire a programmer. Then we will discuss about how much it costs to hire a decent full-time programmer, either in UK, USA, or India, depending upon your needs. And then potentially moving forward, because I am from India, I know a little bit more culturally as well as how things work in different states. I will be discussing, if you decide to go forward hiring a full-time programmer in India, what factors to consider before making a decision. And then how you can verify if the programmer is working full-time on your project or not. And then we'll discuss what are the different tactics programmers use in order to showcase that they are working on your project full-time but they don't, etc, etc. And then last but not least, and this is one of the biggest thing which I have shared with my friend in the bar, that how not to burn your hands with bad programmers. And this is one of the best tips you could ever get while hiring a programmer from outside India. If you're hiring from within India or anywhere in the world, this tactic actually works everywhere. All right, so you ready? Okay, let's get started. First thing, how to decide which programmer you need. So being in the startup world, being friends with a lot of founders, I came to know that mostly when you're working on a startup, either you're working on a app for your mobile phones, which could be an iOS or Android. You could be working on a web app, which is based on your desktop, or you could be working on a desktop app, for example, Slack, or something which runs on a desktop or Windows or Mac or Linux. Or you could be working on a service which needs a platform where people can order your service and then get it delivered. Or if you're like a scientist or doing a lot of data analysis, then you could juggle between IoT devices or analysis. There's so many things. But in order to decide which programmer you need, first you need to decide what you want the programmer to code. What exactly the objective of your project. For example, if you need a programmer to code a mobile app, then it depends upon the requirements of the app. If your app needs access to the camera, access to the location, and a lot of native feature of your mobile phone or the device, then you might want to hire somebody who knows, for iOS, Swift language, which is the core language which programmers use to code in the iOS. And for Android, you need somebody who understands Java, which is Android. And then, for web platform, you could hire somebody who understand how to code in HTML, or how to code in React or AngularJS, all these kind of front end technologies. If you want somebody who can create a cross-platform app, for example, somebody who can code one time and then you can utilize the code across all the platforms depending upon the need of your app, you could hire somebody who can code in React Native or Flutter, which is one of the programming language introduced by Google recently. So, if you hire somebody for React Native, that person could code in iOS, Android, and web, uh, you know, simultaneously, because the logic will be same, the language will be same, and then he just have to export the same code on three different languages. Three different platforms. So iOS, Android, and web. For example, Instagram is made on React Native. Facebook is made on React Native, and there's tons of apps. Actually, more than million apps which were created in React Native. I couldn't say same for Flutter, but it actually depends upon what you require. But to answer your question, how to decide which programmer you need to first understand what objective you want to achieve, and then based on that, you decide which programmer you require. So in this particular presentation, we'll take that there is a startup who wants to create a web app, Android app, an Android app, and a iOS app, and that's why our objective is to hire a programmer who understand how to code in React Native and export the same code on three different platforms. And it's a simple app which actually creates a POS system for a restaurant, and then people can actually order on their iOS and Android device, and then also pay on it. So it's very simple app, right? So this is how we decide. I'm happy to discuss more with you if you have specific needs. So give me a shout in the comments, and then we can discuss about it. Now, next question we have is how to decide where to hire a programmer. Now, it is very important that when you're figuring out where you want to hire a programmer, it depends upon many factors actually. So one of the biggest factors is budget. So let's say, for example, if you're a founder and you have a investor already, you have raised some money, then you have the budget, so you can hire programmers in your city or in your area, where you can just post a job for contracts or full-time hire and then hire, and then you can just start working on it. But it also depends upon time. So how much runway you have, how much time you have to deliver the MVP or the product you want to develop. For example, even if you have money but you have less time, then you have to hire a lot of contractors, and sometimes the contractors are not available in your area, right? Then the skill set, for example, if you want to hire a React Native developer, you could find it easily in New York or Los Angeles, but you might not be able to find it in Seattle, or Manhattan. So that's one of the other reasons. And then it also depends upon where the programmer is located. For example, if you interviewed few programmers and some of them are not in your city, then you might have to end up contracting them with a remote contract, so they could work from their own place. And one of the most important thing which I felt personally is crucial is culture. uh, for example, if you're living in a Western country and the programmers in India, and they're not aware of your culture, for example, Easter holidays, Christmas, or holidays for kids, or you are not aware of their culture. For example, there are many festivals in India called for example, Holi, Diwali, and all these kind of festivals. And people literally take off for 5 days during these holidays, and you need to be aware of them because these are very important holidays from a culture perspective. So culture is one of the important factors, I would say, to consider when you're considering where to hire the programmer, right? So let's move on to how much it costs to hire a decent full-time programmer. Now, as per my experience, what I would say is, let's say um, my friend who is a founder, he wants to hire a programmer. He is based in Europe, in Germany, and he wants to hire a programmer, React Native developer in USA. The issue with that is the React Native technology is quite demand in current world, and the React Native developers are really expensive to hire. Uh, when you go for a USA based developer, you might end up, you know, um, paying hefty fees like $5,000 a month for a React Native developer on a contract basis, and then full time job for a React Native developer could be around $250,000 a year, and that's something which is very expensive. Whereas in UK, you might end up paying around 110,000 pounds a year for a full time developer, or similar kind of cost in USA. It might be a little less than USA in UK and Europe, but not that much. Compared to India, if you hire a React Native developer in India, it could be around, let's say, $70,000 a year for a very good React Native developer. But you could find somebody with $30,000 a year, compensation too. It depends upon what kind of programmer you need. So just very high level, an HTML front end developer USA would cost you $3,000 or $4,000, depending upon the experience. UK similar, 2.5, 3,000 pounds. India somewhere around 1,500 or $2,000. Contractual basis also same. So it's quite expensive to hire programmers anyways. But if you play your cards right, if you know which programmer you need and where to hire it, then you might end up saving a lot of money. Okay. So let's move to the next one, which is which cities in India has electricity, internet, and other problems. So we have discussed, how, where, and what are the factors. Now, let's say, for example, my friend who is in Germany, he decided to hire a React Native developer in India. And that's because his budget is low, he has a little bit of time available with him, and he wanted to hire somebody full time who can work on this project. Now, you must be wondering, well, I can do that. I can go to India, post a job, and hire somebody. Yes, you can. But remember, in India also, developers, programmers have a very good salaries. If you go to big cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi, these cities are metro cities, and they have salaries for full-time programmers almost similar to what we have in UK and mostly Europe. It's not equal to what we have in USA, but it's not that far away either. Now, some cities in India, they have skill shortages. For example, you won't be able to find a decent React Native developer in tier 2 cities in India, but there are some cities where you can find them for a cheaper price. Some cities of India has electricity issues. So, for example, if you hire a really good programmer from those cities where they have electricity issues, then you might end up spending lots of hours thinking, oh, why my programmer is not responding my message on Slack. And after 6 or 7 hours, that programmer will reply you and say, oh, there was no electricity, so I was not able to connect to the internet. Some cities have broadband issues, some cities have too much noise. There are two tier cities in India which is too much crowded, too much noise around, so it's very difficult for programmers to focus and deliver quality product. but some cities are perfect for hiring remote developers. So let me give you a hint. If I would go and hire a programmer in India, I would prefer metro cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, these kind of cities, because they have really good electricity supply, really good broadband, but the cost of living is very high in these cities. So you need to interview a lot of people and understand what their situations are. Now, in order to hire a full-time developer or programmer, you need to remember one thing. There are two types of programmers in India. One, who are already working with big giant companies and they have good salaries, but in order to make some extra money, they work part-time, basically moonlighting. I would definitely suggest you not to hire these programmers, because what's going to happen is the programmers will spend a lot of energy during the daytime job and then come back and then they work on your project. So sometimes they're tired and sometimes it's very difficult for them to deliver the product. I would suggest that go for the programmers who work full time on your product or project and they don't have any full time jobs. Now, it is very difficult for somebody who is sitting outside India figure out if the person is working full time on your project or not. So, it's very somebody can easily lie to you that they are working full time on your project and you won't know. But there are tricks and tips which I can, share with you to understand how that works. Okay. So there are some tier 2 cities which I would suggest you to hire programmers from. For example, Hyderabad is good. There's a city called Indore in central state of India. It's called Madhya Pradesh. There's a city called Raipur in Chhattisgarh. There is a city close to Mumbai, which is Surat. It's in Gujarat, and Jaipur, the pink city, you might have heard about it. These cities are tier 2 cities. The programmers are not highly paid in these cities, but these cities has good electricity supplies, broadband is available, and they are skilled also. So you will find skilled programmers in these cities, which will not cost you your eye, but they could deliver good quality code. So I would suggest to go for these cities if you want to hire programmers. How to verify if the freelancer programmer working full time? Now this is a very good question. Usually what happens is you interview some programmers, they say that they're working full time on your project, but they don't. They work full time at their job and then work part time in your project. So how can you make sure that the programmer is working full time on your project? Well, there are tools which you can use and deploy on their computer, but that is micromanagement, and I am strictly against micromanagement. You should never do a micromanagement. The best way to understand if they're working full time on your project is use Scrum framework. You have a sprint which is a week long. You agree with the programmer that these are the stories that you have to deliver within this week, and the programmer agrees with you, and then track these sprints for 4 or 5 weeks. You will get to know that whatever the programmer is committing is delivering it at the end of the week or not, and then with the percentage of the variance you will understand, okay, this time, for example, for 5 user stories, the story point were 25, and end of the week, out of 5 user stories, the programmer delivered 4. So basically delivered, I don't know, 21 story points. So 4 story points were not delivered. Within 5 weeks of time, you will get to know the variance. If the variance is more than 30%, you will get to know that the programmer is not working full time on your project. And this is not 100% foolproof formula, because sometimes what happens is, if your project is something the programmer has already worked, if your project is something similar to the other project the programmer already has worked, so he or she already has the code base, and then he's just configuring the code base according to your sprints, then it's very difficult to understand if that person has coded it within the week. But slowly when you develop the relationship with that person, and messaging that person on Slack every 1 hour or two, understanding how it's going on, and if the programmer is asking you questions, that tells you that the programmer is working and having some business logic challenges going through the programming when he's doing it, and that tells you that the programmer is working full time on your project. And this is the way I track my projects whenever I outsource them, and I would suggest you to do the same, because it helps a lot. Okay, so this is how you verify how if the freelance programmer is working full time on your project. Okay, one of the biggest questions I've been asked in different presentations is how not to burn your hands with bad programmers. Now, what I do personally is I use this trick, which has worked out really well for me in past several years. Is whenever I interview programmers, and then I finalize to contract with one programmer or two, or team of it, I give them a small piece of work. Let's say a piece of work for 2 sprints, 2 weeks. And you don't even have to give them a 2 weeks of work. You can give them a small piece of work for a day or two. See how they deliver it, what kind of enthusiasm they have, how the deadlines work out for them, how the relationship works with you. Understand it. And then give them another piece of work, and give them another piece of work. For first 3 pieces of work, if you give it to them and they deliver it on time, deliver it under budget, and they are dedicated to you, you get to know the programmer is good or bad. Because ultimately the programming skill you can find, but the organizational skill set of a programmer is actually more important than programming skills. How organized is the programmer? Can the programmer deliver on the agreed timelines? Can the programmer deliver on the agreed budget? Is the communication skill of the programmer good enough for you to understand him, and him or her, and you understand the programmer same way? These are the factors which will tell you that the programmer is bad or good. And then after 3 pieces of work, if the programmer delivers it on time with budget, and the relationship is going good, then you're good to go. And that is how I try to set up our initial benchmark for our relationship and the project. I have burned my hand so many times hiring different programmers, and I have hired programmers from US, I have hired programmers from UK, Europe, and India also. And what I found is the bad programmers could be found anywhere around the world, and the good programmers are found anywhere around the world. So you have to decide which one you want to go forward with, and you have to decide which one works well with you according to your needs. So that is very important. So make sure that you give them 3 small pieces of work, let them work on it, decide, you track their work, and decide on the basis of the outcome of these 3 pieces of work, and then you will give them the full contract. And this is how you not burn your hands with bad programmers, right? Okay, now, because a lot of people come to me and ask me, can you please help us with hiring programmers full time for a project from my startup group? What I did is I put a simple website together. It's called peoplespots.com. So if you want help, then just give me a shout. Book a free consultation on peoplespots.com. And if you if you want, I can help you out hiring a full-time programmer from India, which will be in your budget and potentially could last multiple years working with you, if you are good for him or her, and then if the programmer is good for you. Okay, so yeah, let me know if you like the video. Give me a thumbs up, like to the video. If you don't like it, you can dislike it also. And if you want to add some information, just comment below, and then I'll try to add them into my future videos. Thanks. Have a nice one. Bye.